So hi, everybody. I am thrilled to have Alanna Downey here today. She is the Clinical Nutrition Coordinator at the Blavatnik Family Chelsea Medical Center. And the topic of her presentation is nutrition during treatment and beyond. She works with all patients at the Cancer Center, including GYN oncology. During this presentation, Alanna will hopes to provide more insight into nutrition during cancer treatment and survivorship. So thanks everybody for joining. If you do have questions for Alanna, you can write them in the chat and she'll either get to it like in live time if being appropriate or at the end. So thank you so much. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jillian. I'm going to share my screen because I have a little presentation. Okay, but I'm not too good. Oh, perfect. There we go. So like Jillian said, my name is Alanna. I'm one of our dietitians at one of Mount Sinai's various outpatient cancer clinics. I work down at the Chelsea location and I work with multiple different cancer populations, one of them being GYN. And today we're going to discuss more about nutrition during your treatment and beyond into survivorship. So our objectives today, we're going to discuss our nutrition goals during treatment. We're going to go through nutrition therapy for common treatment side effects that a lot of people do have. And then we're going to talk about nutrition after treatment, and any questions that come in, we will answer at the end. So our nutrition goals during treatment. So treatment for each person may look a little different. Some people do chemotherapy, some people do radiation, some people do chemo and radiation therapy. Some people take oral medicine. So for each person, it's going to be different, but for every person, we want to make sure that we're fueling your body with the calories and protein that it needs to do all of its necessary jobs. And when we're giving our body all of the calories and protein that it needs, it's going to help us feel better. You're going to be able to have a little bit more energy, hopefully. But yes, making sure that we're meeting our calorie and protein goals. And during treatment, they can be a little bit more elevated than our regular day to day. You're doing a lot during treatment, your body is processing a lot, so we might need a little bit more than you're used to. So to make sure that you're meeting those calories and protein, we tend to look at people's weights. It's a good measurement for us to try to make sure that you are eating enough. If you think about it, when people are trying to lose weight, a lot of times they will try to eat less. So we want to make sure that you're maintaining your weight by eating all the calories and protein that is needed. However, sometimes weight is not the best measurement for us, depending if the patient has some sort of fluid accumulation, whether it be on their extremities, so on their legs, a lot of times we see it, but also sometimes in their abdomen. And in this case, if that is happening, it is no problem. We just won't look at it as a true measurement because it's not your accurate weight. It's very much skewed because you have a lot of fluid on you. So in that case, our dietitians, we are fully prepped to take down everything that you tell us, which is why we always ask you, what did you eat the day before? And it kind of helps us do a quick calculation, see if what you are telling us is meeting what we estimate for your calorie and protein needs. So that's why we always ask you that very hard question, what did you eat yesterday? And I know sometimes it tricks some people up, but good to try to have in your mind if you're coming in the next day for treatment and you think you might see the dietitian, to kind of remember what you ate the day before, or even write it down. A lot of people write down what they eat, and we love that. That is a great way for us to kind of see what you've been doing. Hydrating appropriately. I'm sure you hear from the dietitian, the nurses, the nurse practitioners, the doctor, to hydrate, hydrate, and hydrate. Important for your body to do all of its functions, of course. And of course, some people have other medical conditions where fluids, you kind of have to restrict your fluids. You can't have too much, and there is such a thing as overhydrating. So making sure that we're hitting our personal hydration goals. And then the plant-based diet, which we'll talk more in depth later on in the presentation. But as long as you're feeling well during treatment and the side effects aren't something that we would need to change your eating patterns for, the plant-based diet is a great eating pattern that we promote. It's as you can tell, big on plant-based food, so lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, just trying to reduce those ultra processed foods, so things like cakes and cookies, and having more lean protein, so things like chicken without the skin and fish, but we'll get more into it once we get through the side effects. So for anybody who's gone through treatment, you know that there are side effects that come with the medications, the chemotherapy, the radiation, so we'll touch upon a few common ones. We have poor appetite, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, taste changes, and feeling full fast. So the first one we'll talk about is poor appetite, obviously a very big one in the nutrition realm. We want to make sure that everybody is trying to eat the best that they can during treatment. And the poor appetite really can vary. Obviously, every person is different and they react to their treatments very differently. And every treatment is different also. So some people might get poor appetite for a few days after treatment and then they're fine. Some people might get poor appetite for a little bit longer. People who come every 3 weeks for chemotherapy tend to have a better appetite after like that first or second week. But like I said, everybody is different. So we want to make sure though that everybody is trying to eat the best that they can. So for some tips that can help with that is to try to have smaller, more frequent meals. Anybody who's ever met with me during their treatment, this is like, I think my catchphrase, small, more frequent meals. I say it a lot throughout the day, but it really does help. When you have a poor appetite, it's really difficult to sit down to a big breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's daunting to sit down to that big plate of food and kind of know that your appetite's not where it normally is. And on a normal day, you would be able to finish that, but right now your appetite's not the best, and you know that you won't be able to finish it. And it's okay to have littler meals and smaller portions, but we just have to do it more often. So maybe instead of having a big breakfast, lunch, dinner, we have 5 or 6 smaller meals. We kind of split each meal up into 2 smaller meals. Sometimes people find that's even too big, and that's fine also. Some people will have small snacks, maybe like every 2 to 3 hours a snack, but it has to be a snack that has good, high calorie, high protein foods, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. A lot of times we wait to be hungry to eat. And during treatment, sometimes we have to try to encourage ourselves to eat even when we're not hungry, which is when those smaller snack size meals can be a little easier. Because it's definitely hard to try to eat a whole meal when you're not hungry. But trying to have a little snack is definitely easier. I won't say it's always successful, but it's easier to try. I always say just try a bite or a sip of something. Trying that sometimes gives you the more encouragement. You're like, okay, I was able to take a bite. I could probably do another one. And it kind of helps you get along through the process of trying these smaller, more frequent meals. Important to pay attention to your day. Sometimes people find that they're more hungry in the morning time, maybe they're more hungry in the evening time. Try to make that one of your bigger meals during the day, so that we're really monopolizing on that time where you have your most hunger. Like I said before, we want to try to make sure every bite counts by choosing high calorie and high protein foods. So high calorie foods, things like avocados, nuts, nut butter. Like there's a ton more. I'm just throwing out a few. High protein foods could be things like 2% cottage cheese, yogurt. It could be some hummus, scrambled eggs. Again, tons of options, some fish, all good ones. Sometimes a little light movement can help improve your appetite. So if you're able to do a walk around the block, if you're able to go farther, definitely go farther. If you're able to do some sort of physical activity, whatever physical activity you're medically cleared to do and that you like to do, sometimes that helps with your appetite, and it can also help with fatigue as well. And it's always good to have a variety of foods available at home. I know sometimes after treatment, people say, I just don't know what I want to eat. And sometimes it's things that I don't have at home. So I always encourage people before you come in for treatment, try to have a stocked fridge and freezer and pantry full of all different types of foods, anything that you think you may want to have. And always it's great benefit if you have somebody around who's willing to go to the store and pick you up things or somebody to make you things, but I know that's not an option for everybody, so having those foods at your ready at home is always a good place to start. Okay, another big side effect that we see a lot is nausea and vomiting. Luckily, there are medications that hopefully the providers will be prescribing to people going through treatment that need them. And we encourage people to take them as prescribed. Of course, if you have more questions about your medications, it's best to ask your doctors, or the nurse practitioners or the PAs, whoever is working with the doctor, because there are other ones that they can always try. But taking these medications to help prevent these side effects is great because then you're able to eat, you're able to feel better with all those calories and protein going in, much better than if, of course, we don't want you to be feeling nauseous and throwing up and not being able to eat. So taking those medications as needed, and again, asking your providers any questions about it, or if you have a nausea medication that's not working for you, asking them more about other options. It's important to avoid skipping meals when we're nauseous, and I know it sounds a little bit counterintuitive. You're nauseous, you don't feel like eating, but sometimes having an empty stomach can make nausea worse. So just trying some very small, frequent meals. I'm sure you guys have now caught on the theme of small, frequent meals. Very helpful when we're nauseous. And trying to sip on some clear liquids that do provide calories. Of course, we want you to have water and to get hydrated, but sometimes liquids are a little bit easier when we're nauseous to get in. So it could be some broth, it could be a little bit of water mixed with juice, it could be some electrolyte drinks, something to help give us some sort of calories in there. Blander foods tend to be easier when we're nauseous rather than spicy, fried, high fiber foods. Those tend to be a little bit more difficult when people are nauseous. So having things like pretzels and crackers and some dry toast, maybe a popsicle. People tend to like the cold feeling on their mouth and the chilledness. But some people also like some broth too. So just trying to have some of those blander things. A lot of times smells can upset people and make them more nauseous. So if that is something that happens to you, trying cold or room temperature foods can be helpful. Hot foods tend to have a smell, but cold and room temperature foods tend to not have a smell. So try having those. If you have the benefit of having somebody in your home who can cook for you, you should take the night off from being the chef and go into a room where you can close the door, turn a fan on, open up a window, keep it well ventilated, and have whoever's cooking cook in the kitchen and also keep it well ventilated, open up the windows, have the fans going. And then when it's time for you guys to eat, also eat in a well ventilated room so the smells aren't staying stagnant in the room and they're kind of coming and going. Something that helps a lot of people with nausea and vomiting are ginger products. So ginger tea, there are candies, there's crystallized ginger, the spice. At sushi restaurants, they have the pickled ginger. A lot of people find that ginger is helpful to nausea. And then again, using the medication as it is prescribed. A big side effect that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but is an important one to talk to us about, is diarrhea. So again, with diarrhea, hopefully patients who have this side effect, their providers have given them medications or prescribed them medications that will help with this. And again, we encourage you to take them as needed, and any questions or concerns about them to definitely bring it up with your provider. With diarrhea, it is very important that we try to get it under control with these medications, because if you're having diarrhea, you're eating food and it's kind of coming and going very fast. Your body does not have enough time to absorb all the good nutrients that is in the food that you're trying to eat. So, nutrition-wise, it's very important to stay hydrated with diarrhea. As you can imagine, when we're going to the bathroom that often, we're expelling a lot of water, but also electrolytes. So that's why it's important to stay hydrated with water and those low sugar electrolyte drinks. If you want something more natural, you could do something like broth, which has some sodium, and coconut water, which has some potassium. Again, those small frequent meals are coming into play. Having smaller meals a little bit easier to digest, so a little bit easier on your whole GI system. There are some foods that can make diarrhea worse, and if you're already having diarrhea, the last thing I want to do is to make it worse for you. So for some people, that is dairy products. I will say not everybody. So everybody is different. These are just general suggestions. So for some people, dairy can make diarrhea worse. So we tend to encourage people to go for dairy-free options. A lot of times spicy foods can make diarrhea worse, as well as think of high fat, like greasy fried foods and overly sweet products. You'll see on here I mentioned high insoluble fiber foods. So there's two types of fiber. Insoluble fiber, which tends to add bulk to your stool and it helps speed up digestion. So if we were having the opposite problem of diarrhea, if we were having constipation, we'd want to have more insoluble fiber. But right now we're in the land of diarrhea. So we want to reduce our insoluble fiber foods. So examples of insoluble fiber foods are things like raw fruits and vegetables, our whole grains, things like nuts and seeds and certain beans like kidney beans and black beans. So when we have diarrhea, we want to try to have foods with more soluble fiber. So that this is the fiber that sucks up a lot of excess liquid so that it makes your stools more firm. So that's things like bananas and applesauce, cooked carrots, cooked green beans, melon, and oatmeal, and mashed potatoes. Those are some better choices and a little bit easier on your stomach also when we have diarrhea. So now we'll talk about the opposite problem of diarrhea, which would be constipation. And again, there are medications that you can be prescribed from your doctor to help with constipation. So again, if you have questions about them, ask your providers, and we encourage you to take them as needed, as they're prescribed. So hydration, again, is very important. Making sure that we're getting enough liquids in so that we're able to have a smooth bowel movement is important. Drinking a hot liquid, so that could be tea, it could be coffee, it could just be some hot water, or a warm cereal. So think things like oatmeal, farina, cream of wheat, grits, cream of rice, all those things. The warmth of those products sometimes helps people have a bowel movement. So where in diarrhea, we wanted to reduce insoluble fiber. Here in constipation, we want to slowly increase it because when we have constipation, we want to tend to have a higher fiber diet. So increasing those insoluble fibers. So again, those raw fruits, those raw vegetables, those whole grains, the beans, the nuts, the seeds, those types of foods. But we do want to do it slowly. I don't want you to go from having very little fiber to then the next day having 3 kale salads topped with nuts and beans and having some fruits on the side. That's a lot of fiber at once, and your stomach's probably not going to be too happy with you. So slowly increasing it. And while we're increasing our fiber intake, we have to slowly increase our water intake as well. If you're really stuck, a lot of people find that prune juice or prunes can be really helpful, and new research has come out that kiwis also are very helpful with constipation as well. And I always tell patients you do not need a lot of prune juice to get the job done, just a little bit, maybe half a cup, so maybe around 4 ounces. Warmed up prune juice is going to work even better because remember those hot liquids tend to help with the warmth. And even a little bit of physical activity, especially something that stimulates that abdomen area can help stimulate a bowel movement as well. So another side effect that tends to be very bothersome for a lot of patients is taste changes. So for most of the other side effects we talked about, the constipation, the diarrhea, the nausea, the vomiting, there's medications that can be prescribed and hopefully would help our patients. However, with taste change, there's no magical medication that's going to help with it. So, but we do have some tips and tricks and hopefully something that works for our patients. We do have a recipe for a little mouth rinse. It has this 1 quart of water, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So we encourage the patients to mix that up, put a little bit in your mouth, swish it around, spit it out every time before you eat. And for some patients that helps, it helps to kind of freshen up the mouth, excite the taste buds, get everything moving. A lot of times patients can taste very sweet things, so think like fruit, honey, but also very like tangy, sour, tart, like lemon and vinegar. That's because those tend to be very like strong flavors, very distinct and unique flavors. So trying those, if you can taste those, I would say try to add those to your meals, but also experiment with other flavors. Go into your spice cabinet and see what you've got lying around, or maybe go to the grocery store and see what different spices are there and see which ones maybe you want to try. I say try to experiment with different flavors, and I know it can be a little annoying to try to experiment and find something that tastes good when you're going through treatment and your appetite's not great and there's so much going on. But trying to find something that tastes good so that eating becomes enjoyable again and it'll encourage you to eat more is so important. So do your experimenting, keep a list of ones that you can taste and try to incorporate them into your meals. Try to have meals have more than one flavor so that you can alternate your bites. Maybe have something sweet and something tangy. And maybe if you can taste garlic, have something that's garlicky. So you can alternate your bites and your taste buds don't get too tired of that one flavor. A lot of times people will say that food, especially meat, tastes very metallic like. So if that is the case, we encourage people to avoid using their metal utensils. Try plastic or maybe bamboo, because if you think about it, if food tastes metallic, you don't want to put more metal into your mouth. Avoid using things that are in cans, because again, that like kind of metallic-y taste might come through. Maybe if you used canned vegetables, maybe try frozen or fresh if you're able to. If things taste metallic, also sometimes adding some sort of marinade to your meats or your proteins can help. Adding some sort of sweetness and some sort of form of a healthy fat, maybe like olive oil, sometimes it helps to cut up that metallic taste. If things taste too salty, we encourage people to try to look for low sodium things, add some sort of sweet flavor or sour flavor. So maybe some of that lemon juice, maybe a little bit of fruit on the side. If things are too sweet, though, adding some sort of acidic food. So again, the lemon and the vinegar are really a great option in there. Another side effect that we see a lot is feeling full quickly. And this is seen in a lot of patients, so it can be really hard to meet your calorie goals when you're feeling very full very fast. So again, those small frequent meals are very helpful. Some people, we encourage you to set a timer on your phone every hour or so to remind you to eat. And I know that it probably won't be a huge portion of food, and that's okay. That's why we're having food very often throughout the day to make sure that we're eating often enough, those little meals that we're able to meet our calorie goals. When we're eating, it's really important to dedicate that time to your solid foods and try to save your liquids for in between meals. Of course, if you need a sip or a few sips of something while you're eating, please do so, but try to avoid having like a full bottle of water or a full glass of water. Because if you think about it, your stomach is only so big, it can only hold so much. And if we fill it up with all this liquid takes up a lot more space than the solid foods. So that's why we don't want to try to have a ton of liquids when we're trying to eat our solid foods because there's going to be no space for the solid foods. And that's where all the good calories and protein is from. So definitely trying to encourage yourself to try that. Some foods can make you feel more gassy than others, and that gas can make you feel full really fast. So those gassy foods tend to be what we call cruciferous vegetables, things like cabbage and broccoli and Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, onions, all great vegetables. But maybe if you're feeling this overly gassy, feeling full quickly, maybe we take a small break from those vegetables or we reduce their intake. Another thing that can be helpful if you're feeling full fast is chewing with your mouth closed. When we chew with our mouth open, you're eating a lot of air, again, making a lot of air and bubbles and gas inside of your stomach. So it's taking up a lot of space. Similar thought of using a straw. When you suck up from a straw at first, you don't get the liquid right away, you get a little bit of air, and we don't want to be eating a ton of air. If you like bubbly beverages also, so like carbonated beverages, whether it be seltzer, things like that, the bubbles again, they're going to create a lot of gas, a lot of air in there that's going to take up a lot of space. You can still have those liquids, maybe pour it into a glass, take a spoon or something, and swish it around in the cup so that the bubbles kind of go away. And that should be helpful too. So those are not the only side effects that people see, those are just main big ones, and that's kind of general overview of some suggestions to help us out. Of course, if you're experiencing those side effects and you're going through treatment, you can always ask the nurse or your doctor, or if you see the dietitian, flag them down so that we can come up with a more personalized plan for you, because everybody is different. But that's just some general overview. So now more so nutrition after treatment. So
Alanna,
yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I wrote two questions in the chat that I
Oh,
thought might be
yes.
relevant
Oh,
for people
perfect.
in treatment.
Yes.
Would you mind just, because I'm thinking about in terms of timing, I bet that you might have the same
No,
amount
yeah,
of time
let's
for the
do it
app
now.
just to do these. So the first was for people in treatment, can you suggest ways to increase electrolytes?
So the electrolytes, a great question. A good way to do that is to use those electrolyte drinks, whether it is like a powder form or a pre-made liquid form, or there's tablets you drop in water. I feel like that it's a new market that has totally opened up. There's so many options out there. And if you have like particular questions on like which ones are the best to use, whoever asks the question, you can definitely reach out to me or whoever your dietitian is, and we can go over them in depth. Some of them have more of the electrolytes than others. So depending on which ones you like, we can, maybe tell you to add a little bit more salt or things like that. But otherwise, eating foods that have those electrolytes, so if you're looking for more potassium, things like bananas, oranges, potatoes, tomatoes, avocados, great sources of potassium. Um, but also your provider might, if your electrolytes are low often, they sometimes will provide you with a prescription for like a pill form of the electrolytes also. So there's a lot of different options for the electrolytes.
And my other question was, are there any fruits or vegetables that should be avoided because of pesticides while in treatment?
I would say just washing your fruits and vegetables how you love. I hopefully everybody has been washing their fruits and vegetables, but washing your fruits and vegetables well during treatment is important. Obviously, we want it to be well washed. We don't want to get any foodborne illnesses. We don't want anybody to get a foodborne illness, but especially people who are immunocompromised. We don't want you to get sick from those foods, but definitely you don't have to be afraid of that. Just washing them well, I think, was a good place to start.
Okay. Did anybody else have questions right now for Alanna in terms of nutrition while in treatment?
Right here.
I'll go ahead.
Oh, hi.
back.
Yeah, I just finished my treatment yesterday, last
Oh,
chemo.
congrats.
Thank you. However, I was delayed a week because my platelets went down low. They were like 81, and then I was eating things that I Googled and it went up to 120. But I'm concerned that it doesn't go down again now the next few weeks. So I just want to ask you your opinion as I mean, I was eating spinach and tuna, things like that. I really can't eat nuts. It doesn't, I have Crohn's, so that's out. But I just want to hear like anything else that you suggest to raise my platelets so that don't go down now the next few weeks.
Yeah, so sometimes the blood work, meaning like the white blood cells, the red blood cells, the platelets, that kind of stuff, sometimes it's hard to pinpoint nutritionally. For the white blood cells, there's not too much to do besides following food safety. And for like the red blood cells and the platelets, and I know a lot of people tend to try to have more iron. in their food. So like the spinach, like you mentioned, good source of iron. But sometimes those are low for not nutritional reasons, but of course eating those foods that are rich in those sources are not going to, it's not going to be harmful. But eating more of those iron-rich foods can be good, but sometimes our blood counts are low for other reasons. Some people have it low for chronic illness. Sometimes it's not always iron, so it's hard to pinpoint exactly. We can always chat afterwards. I can look a little bit closer, kind of into your particular case so I can help you more, okay?
Sure. Thank you very much.
Of course. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna dive into now the nutrition after treatment. So the American Institute for Cancer Research, they've set forth some guidelines for survivors to kind of help them through this new survivorship that they're entering into. So this is where we're going back to this plant-based diet. So the plant-based diet has a lot of research behind it and its helpfulness in being a survivorship and helping to helping hopefully to prevent a reoccurrence. And like the name sounds, it's very rich in those plant-based foods, rich in having lots of fruits and vegetables, those whole grain products, and trying to limit or reduce our intake of lots of those saturated fat, ultra processed, very sugary foods. You can still have animal proteins on this, and we're going to look at a picture of a plate on the next slide, so it'll kind of be easier for you guys to visualize what it will look like. But the plant-based diet is full of these fruits and vegetables because they have tons of phytochemicals and antioxidants, which help with inflammation. And it's great to get a variety of fruits and vegetables, all different colors, because the different colors and the different types, they have different antioxidants, different phytochemicals. So you might have heard of, say, like lycopene. That's rich in tomatoes because they're red. But if you have that, if that's the only one, you're only getting the lycopene that meal. It's good to get a variety, maybe have some tomatoes and some spinach and some carrots, 3 different colors. You have red, you have green, you have orange, different colors. Like I'm sure you have heard like to eat the rainbow to try to get as many colors on your plate as possible. And that's a great way to get all those different phytochemicals and antioxidants in there. The plant-based diet is also high in fiber, which we've discussed a lot about fiber today, whether it be for diarrhea or constipation. But overall, fiber is a great part of our diet. It helps to keep us fuller for longer. It helps us to have our bowel movement if we're having more of that insoluble fiber, which the plant-based diet focuses more so on. And it also helps to kind of regulate our blood sugar. But we're going to talk more about the plant-based diet even more on the next slide too. Physical activity is important too. Whatever physical activity you have been medically cleared or you're able to do, they recommend around 150 minutes a week. So that's split up to almost like 30 minutes, 5 days a week, if you want to look at it that way. And again, whatever physical activity you're able to do or you're medically cleared for, and whatever you like to do, you got to make your physical activity something that is enjoyable for you, and for everybody, that's something that's different. Maintaining a healthy weight, which looks different on everybody. Everybody has a different medical history. Everybody has a different height and different genetic background. So it looks different for everybody, but trying to maintain that healthy weight that's appropriate for you. And limiting or eliminating our alcohol intake is also very beneficial to trying to help prevent a reoccurrence. So this is our plant-based diet plate, and this is a photo from the American Institute of Cancer Research. So they have a new campaign which talks a lot about this. They call it the New American Plate. So kind of our old and typical American plate used to be very big on the meat and potatoes. So you'd see a big serving of protein, a big serving of meat, a big serving of potatoes, and maybe a small little serving of some string beans or something, some sort of vegetable. You can see on this new American plate, 2/3 of the plate is our fruits, our vegetables, our beans, our whole grains. So in this picture, we have some broccoli, we have some tomatoes, we have some zucchini, some peppers. It looks like to me quinoa on there also. So a lot of those good plant-based foods. And you can see there's lots of colors on this plate. We've got orange, we've got red, we've got yellow. And then we have a third of the plate for that animal protein. To me, it looks like maybe chicken, or maybe turkey. So something like a lean protein. So chicken without the skin, turkey without the skin, fish, eggs. Those are all good protein options. And you may be thinking that's a small portion of protein on there, but the quinoa on here also does provide some protein. You'll see on this plate also, the food seems to be prepared in a way that it's not fried. The broccoli looks like maybe it's been steamed. The zucchini looks like it's been grilled. The chicken, we'll call it for now, looks like maybe it's been baked or maybe sauteed, something like that. So there's not a lot of emphasis on tons of added saturated fat by like frying things. Seems like more so maybe there's some of those healthy fats in there. So things like olive oil is a good cooking oil to use, and some avocado and nuts if you're able to eat those. So that is what we should strive for the plate to look like. Of course, it's it's a process to go through. You're not going to jump from the old American plate to this new American plate in one go. And if you go on the American Institute for Cancer Research, they kind of have a couple of in-between plates to kind of help people guide towards this new plant-based diet plate. So if you're looking for some inspiration on that, their website is a great resource.